Before we get started, I have a quick favor. I've been self-funding the Finding Genius podcast for 5 years now. I've done over 3,000 episodes. And as you can see on YouTube, we're up over 1 million views on the channel, which is fantastic. The next thing I really want to push on is to get up to 10,000 subscribers. Because once we do, we'll be able to put a donate button and we'll be able to solicit donations to help keep the podcast running and to also get the Finding Genius Foundation moving along. We have a big project studying anxiety, depression, and PTSD and working on a product to help people overcome these problems because I've seen them explode recently after the last 2 years of the whole virus situation. So if you would, please subscribe to the podcast. That would help us tremendously. Give us a thumbs up and check in the description for Buy Me a Coffee. It's about $5. If you could buy me a coffee, I'd really appreciate it. It would help keep the channel going, and I love coffee. Thank you. Self-Decode is the world's first precision health platform that frees you from the generic solutions of traditional healthcare and puts control back in your hands. Using science-backed research and AI-driven algorithms, Self-Decode gives you personalized diet, supplement, and lifestyle suggestions based on your body's blueprint, your DNA. Get started for free with an existing DNA file or order a DNA kit at 25% off with the code GENIUS. Start optimizing your health today at selfdecode.com.
Forget frequently asked questions,
common sense, common knowledge, or Google.
How about advice from a real genius? 95% of people in any profession are good enough to be qualified and licensed. 5%
go above and beyond.
They become very good at what they do, but only
0.1%
are real geniuses. Richard Jacobs has made it his life's mission to find them for you. He hunts down and interviews geniuses in every field: sleep science, cancer, stem cells, ketogenic diets, and more. Here come the geniuses. This is the Finding Genius podcast
with Richard Jacobs.
Before we get started, I have a quick favor. I've been self-funding the Finding Genius podcast for 5 years now. I've done over 3,000 episodes. And as you can see on YouTube, we're up over 1 million views on the channel, which is fantastic. The next thing I really want to push on is to get up to 10,000 subscribers. Because once we do, we'll be able to put a donate button and we'll be able to solicit donations to help keep the podcast running and to also get the Finding Genius Foundation moving along. We have a big project studying anxiety, depression, and PTSD and working on a product to help people overcome these problems because I've seen them explode recently after the last 2 years of the whole virus situation. So if you would, please subscribe to the podcast. That would help us tremendously. Give us a thumbs up and check in the description for Buy Me a Coffee. It's about $5. If you could buy me a coffee, I'd really appreciate it. It would help keep the channel going, and I love coffee. Thank you.
Hello, this is Richard Jacobs with the Finding Genius podcast, now part of the Finding Genius Foundation. We have Michelle Seiler Tucker. She's the author of Exit Rich. She's just let me know that the audiobook version on Audible is out and at a discount for the month of May 2022. Exit Rich talks about the 6P method to sell your business for huge profit. Michelle is the founder and CEO of Seiler Tucker Incorporated. She's sold hundreds of businesses to date and owns and operates several successful businesses. So if you want to hear from an authority on buying, selling, and improving your business to get max value, I think she's it. So Michelle, thanks for coming back.
Thank you. Thanks, Richard, for having me back on.
Yeah, for people that haven't listened before or need a refresher, can you briefly spell out either the 6Ps or an abbreviated version? You know, what makes a business worth more than another business that seems equivalent, let's say, on the surface?
Sure. So Exit Rich is endorsed by Steve Forbes. And Steve Forbes says 80% of businesses on the market will never sell. 80%. So that means you have less than a 20% chance of success, which is pretty scary, right? Less than a 20% chance of success. And there's lots of reasons for that. One of the biggest reasons is what I call the valuation gap. And that's because business owners really don't think about their exit. They don't plan to sell their business until they wake up one day and realize that something's happened. Either they're going through a partner's dispute, divorce, death, this pandemic that we've been going through all over the world for the last 2.5 years. And the worst time to sell your business is really during a catastrophe because your numbers are typically going down, trending downward, and the business is not going to be worth as much. So if you want to maximize value, you really need to plan your exit from the beginning, and you really need to build a business that buyers want to buy. The reason that so many businesses don't sell and don't sell for what the seller wants to sell for, is because what happens, Richard, is typically sellers will call me up and say, hey, I want $15 million for my business. And their EBITDA, which is earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization, is worth $100,000. So there's a huge valuation gap. And the reason why sellers come up with these numbers is it's not based upon the value of their business. It's based upon what they need to enter the next phase of their life, whether that's retirement, whether that's, starting or buying a new company, relocating, whatever that is, they base it on what they need. Buyers don't care what you need. Buyers care what the value is and what the value brings them. So there's always this huge valuation gap. So if businesses are selling, they're typically selling for pennies on the dollar. They're not maximizing value. And
quick question, is there a typical for different industries? Like, I don't know, the clothing industry is 3 to 5 times net, and the energy industry is 2 to 5 times net. Is there any typical? Or can you not rely on that?
There are typicals, but there are things that can drive value, and you can get a much higher multiple than what's typical. So a clothing store, 3 to 5 or 2 to 5, you're in most cases will never get 5 times net income. And it's really based upon the EBITDA. So businesses that are under $1 million in EBITDA, which most clothing stores are way under that, businesses will typically trade for anywhere from 1.5 to 3, maybe 3.5 multiple if their EBITDA is under $1 million. If your EBITDA is over $1 million, the businesses would typically start trading higher. They start at 4, 4.5, and go up. And what makes a business more valuable to a buyer are those synergies, those proprietary assets, things that can help drive the current company to the next level.
What are some basic things that businesses can have? What about policies, procedures, checklist systems? Does that add much value?
It does. So now we're getting into the 6 Ps. So one of the biggest reasons that businesses aren't sellable is because entrepreneurs have created themselves a job that they go to work at every day versus a business that actually works for them, and a business is dependent upon the owner. So people is the first P. You really got to make sure the business that you're working on the business, not in it. You got to make sure the business doesn't depend upon you. I'll give you 2 quick examples. I had a lady that called me from Texas. I know you're in Austin, Texas. She's in Dallas, Texas. Husband dropped out of a heart attack at the age of 40. Left her with a mountain of debt. She didn't know anything about the finances or about the business. Asked me if I could sell it. Started asking some questions. He has a construction company. He has no employees. He has subcontractors. Process is what you just mentioned, Richard. And he had no processes. He had no policies. He had no nothing. All the data was in his head. When he died, the business died. Another example, I got a dentist. One dentist been in business, in practice for over 50 years. One dentist, same dentist that started the company. 3 dental hygienists. 3 dental hygienists are his daughters. And so when he leaves, the patients leave. I already told him, yes, we can sell the business, but we can't maximize it. And there's going to be contingencies in there to mitigate the buyer's risk, which means you and your daughters will have to stay on for 2 to 3 years. And he said, well, honey, we're not staying. I said, well, then, honey, we're not selling. So you really got to look at your business, especially service businesses. You got to look at your business and ask yourself, can this company run without me? Can I take off for 3, 4, 5, 6 months and the business doesn't miss a beat? That's what you got to get to. Most business owners are working in their business. They have their finger in every pie. And you really got to separate that. You got to focus on your strengths, hire your weaknesses, make sure you get the right people in the right seats, and ask the who question. Who handles customer service, marketing, legal, manufacturing, distribution, logistics? The list goes on and on. But you want to make sure that you have a who in every seat, so you're working on the company, not in it. If you're working on the company, in all likelihood, you're not going to maximize value, and you will have to stay on for a few years. And larger businesses will have to sell a percentage and still retain equity in which to give the buyer peace of mind.
How do you know if your business is at the maximum possible automation point? Are you what's that look like? Is the person just speaking with their CEO once a month and going over numbers, or is it okay if the person still spends like an hour or 2 a week talking to key personnel? Is that systematized enough?
Yeah, that's systematized enough for sure. We have an electrical company that we're selling in the 40 to 50 million range. And he has 3 divisions, 2 facilities, $7 million in EBITDA, and he works about 8 to 10 hours a week. That's pretty systematized. However, buyers are still weary and buyers are wanting to, we've gotten several LOIs, all for buying 80% of the business. He doesn't want to sell 80%. He wants to sell 100%. The one thing that he hasn't done that he needs to do a better job at is really identifying who will be those leaders, who will take over when he's not there, who can carry on. And that's something that's really, really important going forward. Even if you're only working a few hours in the business, you want to make sure you always have a next in line. Who can take over for you? Who can, be that visionary and do what you do? Because the one thing that's so scary to buyers is coming into a company where they feel like that owner, even though they only work a few hours a week, that owner still is visible in that business, and that owner is still, in charge of the vision. Does that make sense?
I own my own company as well. It seems like, I don't know, can you get it in one person? And I'm not saying this to brag or anything, but I'm just, really passionate and interested in my business. So I have that passion, I have that interest. I also have to lead it. Is it possible to get that in one person that's your replacement, or do you have to break up your role into a couple different roles in order for it to continue?
So that depends. I mean, that's a good question, but it's going to depend. On this particular example, the electrical company, it's 3 different people because he has an industrial division, he has an electrical division, and he has an engineering division. So he's got a key person in industrial and electrical. Those two people can take over their divisions, and then he has a CFO. So you're looking at 3 people to really take over for one person who's working 10 hours a week. So it really depends upon what your roles are, what you do in the business, who's the closest person. I mean, there's just so many different factors. That's a hard question to answer without knowing the business in its entirety.
But like the personality of someone that, let's say, wants to run the business as a manager versus the personality of someone that wants to grow it, can those two reside in the same person if it's not the original entrepreneur that started it? Like, do people need at least 2, maybe a business development key person and then also a CEO to run it and manage it and keep it going?
So I always say that most operation people are not visionaries. So you have your entrepreneur who's a visionary, and then you have the integrator who's usually the ops manager, right? And so it's two different positions, it's 2 different skill sets, 2 different brain sets, brain mentality, etc. So that's it's a difficult question to answer without really knowing the team. The buyer who comes in to buy your business, that person could be the visionary depending upon what they've done in the past with their companies.
Okay, makes sense, yeah. So what are some of the next P's in your formula?
So then we have products. So going back to people, like I always say, you don't build a business, you build people, and people build a business. And then you go into product. So product is your industry, your product, your service. You really have to look at your industry and ask yourself, is it on the way up? Do you have an Amazon? Or is your industry on the way out and you have a Blockbuster? Because there are industries that are becoming obsolete. So you really need to look at that. I mean, if you look at the restaurant industry, they're struggling, and they've been struggling for the last 2.5 years, and they're going to continue to struggle for a while. So you have to look at your industry and, I always say ask yourself 3 questions, because just because you've been in a business for a certain period of time doesn't mean that you shouldn't innovate. One of the biggest mistakes for business owners is they become complacent. They stop doing what I call AIM, which is always innovate and always market. It used to be that startups were at great risk in our nation of going out of business. Now it's businesses that have been in business over 10 years. So startups used to be 90%. Now only 30% of startups are going out. But if you look at businesses that have been in business for 10 years or longer, 70% of them will go out of business. And that's out of 27.6 million companies. And the main reason for that is, like I said, lack of innovation, lack of marketing. You hear about the big box stories like Toys R Us. Toys R Us has been in business 75 years, goes out of business. Well, Toys R Us also never really innovated. And there's a bunch more stories like that, like Blockbuster. So I always say ask yourself 3 questions. Ask yourself, what business are you in? Amazon did that back in the 80s. They asked themselves what business they're in, and they said, we're in the book fulfillment business. Next question is, what's your superpowers? What do you do better than everybody else? And Amazon said fulfillment. We fulfill products better than anyone else. Third question is, what business should we be in? And Amazon said we should be in the fulfillment business, fulfilling products all over the world. And I did this with a graphics company that I own in Texas, where we install graphics for first responders. So police cars, ambulances, fire trucks. Harris County is a big client of ours. And I asked the question, what business are we in? They said, we're in the install business. I said, what's our superpower? They said, our superpower is our art, and we can do a paint by numbers on how to put the graphics on the car. Well, what business should we be in? We should be in the uninstalled market because it's a lot more profitable. We can ship graphics all around the world. We can basically have a paint by number approach on how to put them on the vehicle, and we can cut our labor cost and not have to have as many installers.
Okay.
And so then, and people just want to dismiss that, kind of like you said, keep going. That's very important because so many businesses, like I said, are in a dying industry. All the business has been doing the same thing for years and years and years and years, and then they wonder why they lose market share. You really always have to look at your business. A lot of times it takes a different set of eyes to find out why is that, you know? So it's really important. I mean, if you look at McDonald's, what business is McDonald's in?
Well, some say the real estate business, some say in the food delivery systems business. It just depends, I guess.
They're really in the real estate business. They're the largest real estate holding company in the world. And if they didn't get into the real estate business, you would not have McDonald's all over the world. Did you watch the movie The Founder?
Yeah, I watched it a while ago. It was very good.
Yeah. So Ray Kroc was about to lose everything. That's why he was in the bank trying to leverage and borrow more money. And he wasn't going to be able to stay in business. So a gentleman followed him out and said, what business are you in? He's the one who told him you need to start buying up the land, build the buildings, lease it to the franchisees. When the franchisees were not complacent, put another franchisee in. That's what gave him the leverage to take over McDonald's. That's why McDonald's is the largest real estate holding company. So it's a very important question to ask and really, ponder on what your business is and what your superpowers are. The next one is processes. I mean, there's the bottom line. You can have the best people, but if you don't have the right processes in place that are efficient, productive, designed with the customer experience in mind, then the people are not going to be very efficient, and it's going to cost. It's going to cost you more money and productivity. So I always tell clients, most business owners get this wrong. Most business owners go into business and they design their processes around their own agenda. Doctors are a perfect example of this. I actually hate going to the doctor's office because our hours are what? Monday through Thursday, 9 to 4, 9 to 5. Sometimes they're off at 2 on one day, and then Fridays are either closed or they're open till noon. They never really look at what does a client want to experience. My husband and I did this. We have 10 medical locations in Louisiana. We're the largest healthcare provider in the state of Louisiana. And we asked ourselves, what are the 3 things we want clients to experience? And we said, we want them to experience flexible hours so they don't always have to take off from work. We want them to experience no wait time. And what's the other one? We want them to experience a friendly staff. So guess what? We're open 3 nights a week till 7:30. We're open on Fridays all day. I'm open a half day on Saturday till 2:30.
Makes sense. Okay.
So it makes a lot of sense, but most business owners don't do that. And business owners need to get out of their own head, and they need to go to their clients and survey their clients and ask them, what are the 3 things you want to experience? McDonald's did that back in the 40s. They said, look, we're going a fast food delivery system here, and we want to design it around our clients' experience. We want them to experience great tasting food that's hot, fast, 30 seconds or less. We got to get back to the basics. If we don't, every business owners want to cry about losing market share. If you're losing market share, it's because you're not catering to your clients. You're not creating a wow experience. And so,
well, you gave a good example of what you did with your business, but what examples have you seen that really impressed you big time about what business owners did to make their business more saleable?
As far as processes go?
Yeah, as far as any of the 6 Ps, any really cool examples that incorporate one or all of them that you see in a business owner that you really admire?
Yeah, so when we're selling businesses, we'll make these little tweaks in a business, but most of the time when we take on a client to sell, the business is pretty much running all 6 Ps. When it's not, we put them into a program called Road to Exit Rich, where we can make these changes in the people and the products and the processes, things of that nature. But some cool examples, let's see, I'm thinking. Well, we have an electrical company that we're selling, the one that I mentioned earlier. One thing that I think is really unique about them is they have a customer section for some of their really big clients. And sometimes their clients comes in and puts out inventory. So they'll have a section for their larger clients that want to come in and just say, hey, I need a light bulb, I need this, I need this, I need that. They'll have a section for that particular client where that client can come in and check things out in their inventory department. I think that's pretty unique. So
can you say a little bit more about that? Like what do you mean? What has this done for their customers and what specifically they do?
They don't do it for all clients. They do it for the larger clients, but it gives their clients flexibility where they don't have to call, place the order, do this, do that. They could just walk into the warehouse, meet with the warehouse manager, pick the part that they want, that they need, check it out, and walk out that day, and they'll get billed for it later. So it creates flexibility. It helps that client be more efficient and solve problems quicker because they don't always need an electrician to come in and put something in.
Yeah, I've noticed a lot of businesses don't seem to have programs for what would be their best customers, expedited service, a higher level that no one else gets. They can pay more, but I don't see a lot of businesses offering that.
Well, Amazon has that. Amazon has Prime Delivery. It's been a mess lately, it seems, with the supply chain. But Amazon has what they offer, Prime Delivery. But you're right. Most companies charge more for that service, like Walmart's doing it, Target's doing it, but they're charging more for it.
Okay. Well, continuing on the 6 Ps, what are the other ones that are remaining?
So we talked about processes, and the biggest thing in processes is when you go to sell your company, one of the biggest things that is going to come up during due diligence is your policy and procedure manuals, your SOP checklist, your employee handbooks, your non-compete contracts. And a lot of business owners don't have all of this in place. And it's not just small businesses. We're selling this, $55 million agriculture company, and they have a logistics department that doesn't really have hardly any policies and procedures. And so you really got to make sure all of that's buttoned up. You got to make sure your employee contracts are buttoned up. You better make sure that your management team has non-competes in place, because otherwise it's going to stall your deal. Buyers are not going to buy large type businesses without all of that in place. And you're going to have to go back and put it together, or they're going to discount the purchase price and do it themselves. And then the next P is proprietary. So we've already mentioned this a little bit when we talked about valuations. Like you mentioned, 2 to 3 to 5 net income. First of all, it's really not net income in large businesses. It's net income in small clothing stores, restaurants, coffee shops, ice cream stores. That's net income. Everything else is a multiple of EBITDA, which is earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, amortization, unless it's a SaaS company. SaaS companies are always a multiple of revenues. And so what drives up the multiple is proprietary assets. Number one is branding. The more well-branded you are, the more they can sell your company for, as long as your brand is relevant in the mind of the consumer, meaning nobody's buying Amazon. The largest brand, the most valuable brand, I should say, $289 billion is how much the Apple brand is worth. The company is worth trillions. But just a brand alone is worth $289 billion. So the more well-branded you are, the more name recognition the company has, the more we can sell the business for versus a company that's not branded at all. The other thing are trademarks. It's shocking to me how many companies don't have a federally trademarked name or logo or slogan. And it's a big problem because I've seen customers in business 5, 10 years, all of a sudden receive a dismiss letter and they have to stop using that company name. And the reason for that is because they never took the federal database. They go to GoDaddy and come up with a name. They go to their state, they get it registered, but they never check the federal database. So it's very important to go to the federal trademark. It's not that expensive. It's about a little bit under $1,000 or $1,000 for a trademark. Also, your products. Most business owners never think about trademarking their products. We have a client right now that has a federal trademark for 6 different products. Each product has exclusivity. One product's in Target, one product's in Walmart, one's in TJ Maxx. So this adds value to the business when you have these federal trademarks. Same thing with patents. If you've ever watched Shark Tank, the question that every shark asks is, do you have a patent on that? Do you have a patent pending? We sold a company for $18 million. They wasn't making that much money, but they had 18 patents. Same thing with contracts, vendor contracts, manufacturing contracts, distribution contracts, any type of franchisor with franchisees. Client contracts are really valuable, but the biggest mistake the business owners make is they forget the transferability clause, saying this contract is transferable upon the new entity. because 98% of sales are asset sales, not stock sales. And so if the contract's not transferable, then you have to go back to your clients and get what's called a consent to transfer. Now your clients know your business is for sale, and what happens if that buyer backs out?
Self-Decode has taken the guesswork out of wellness. By analyzing your genes, lab tests, and lifestyle data, Self-Decode provides the most holistic and personalized plan for optimal health. They're giving our listeners 25% off new DNA kits with the code GENIUS, or you can get started free if you have an existing DNA file. Visit selfdecode.com to learn more.
Yeah, it could be the kiss of death, yeah.
There's a kiss of that. We have a media.
Even if the buyer doesn't back out, they may say, "Oh, I don't want to deal with them. I want to deal with you," and quit.
1,000 times. That's why employees have quit, customers quit. That's why it's imperative to keep the sale of your business confidential. We have a media company that got 2,000 clients on recurring subscription. 2,000. He doesn't have transferability contract in any of his contracts. So can you imagine having to go to 2,000 clients?
Yeah, that would be crazy. I know what would happen.
And it happens with franchisors all the time, Richard. Where franchisors don't have the transferability that the franchisee's contract is transferable upon a new entity.
A couple questions here. I don't know, does your average, what business size really needs branding and trademarks and, federally registered this and that? I mean, if you're a plumber, does it matter? What size and scope do you need these things?
Well, so if you're a solo plumber by yourself, no. But if you have a plumbing company and you've got 50 plumbers, yeah, that's important. Same thing with an electrical company. They have 85 electricians. It's very important because what happens if they receive a letter that says you can't use this company name anymore and they got to start the rebranding process all over again? They'll hire an attorney and they'll go to court, but, they may lose. So it's very important if you're growing. We're talking about building a business here. Now, if you're going to build a business, you really need to cross your T's, dot your I's, and do all this right from the beginning. If it's a small little restaurant, a small little clothing store or something like that, it might not be as imperative as it is a $55 million agriculture company or $250 million distribution company that we're selling. But,
you know what, though? It's funny now that I mentioned it to you. I remember back, there's one restaurant here. It was some Mexican, Texas fusion. And they got a letter from a company, I don't know, in Houston or something. It wouldn't really affect their business, but they demanded that they change their name because they had the name. It was so stupid. Right. And same thing with this other, Thai noodle soup place I remember years ago. They got a letter from across the country saying they had to change their name. And it didn't even affect them, but they didn't want to fight it, and so they did. But it really messed up their business to do that.
Exactly. So this happens. You just named 2 stories. I could name probably 100. It happens all the time. And that's what a trademark is. It protects your rights. So if you don't have the federal trademark, at least do this. At least put the TM, small TM, behind your company name, behind your logo, behind your slogan, put the TM. But if, even that restaurant, even though they're a small restaurant, they're not growing a multi-million-dollar company, it still hurt their business, right? So $1,000.
Yeah.
$1,000 would have saved them all of that headache. It would have saved them from rebranding. It would have saved them from doing all of that.
True. Yeah, that's true. Okay, well, it makes sense.
I'll tell you, there's something that I didn't know because my company is called Seiler Tucker Incorporated, and my trademark attorney, I have a new trademark patent attorney, and he said, Michelle, you really need to get Seiler Tucker Incorporated trademark. And I go, why? It's my name. And they said, so what? And I go, what do you mean it's so what? It's my name. How can somebody use my name? Because you can have Seiler Tucker, you can have a Tucker M&A firm or a Seiler M&A firm or a Tucker business consulting firm, and you do business consulting. He says you need to still protect the Seiler Tucker in those categories so nobody else can use it. And I had no idea. I didn't think. I thought, well, gosh, if it's my name, like Richard Jacobs, why would you have to trademark that, right?
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
So anyway, so I encourage everybody to spend $1,000, get the federal trademark, because it can cost it can save you from heartache. And not only that, at least go and check the federal database before you name your company. Because if you see something similar, or if you see somebody else that has that same name, don't use that same name. And it doesn't matter if it's just in the state of Texas, like you just mentioned. There's somebody from another state that said they had to start using it. So you got to be very careful about that. Make sure you just protect yourself. And like I said, $1,000 to protect your company name, it's worth it.
It makes sense. Any other pieces left that we haven't discussed yet?
We do have two more pieces, but I want to finish proprietary really quickly. Databases are huge. Databases can bring you a lot of money, especially if you're a SaaS company, e-commerce company, app company. If you have an app company, it's been on the market 2 weeks. We already have a above asking price offer on this app company. And databases are huge, especially if they can be retargeted. If you look at Facebook, they pay $19 billion for WhatsApp. And WhatsApp was hemorrhaging money, Richard. Hemorrhaging. But WhatsApp had a synergy. They had 1 billion users, and that's what we're talking about here are the synergies. So any type of content, celebrity endorsements, radio personalities, this all really builds credit, builds value in your business. We have a client that's working with Oprah. Well, guess what? A strategic will pay a lot more money for that business because everybody wants to get their products in front of Oprah, right? So you really have to look at that. And the other thing I want to tell you too is make sure that you take your IP and you own it in a separate corporation. So you don't want to own your patents and everything in your corporation that you're doing business out of, because if you get sued, then you can lose your IP. It's one thing to lose your company. It's another thing to lose your IP. And then the fifth P is patrons. This is your customer base. You know, usually most businesses follow the 80-20 rule, where 80% of your revenue comes from 20% of your clients. And you want to make sure you don't have customer concentration. You want customer diversification, because there's one thing that will decrease value in your company, and that's customer concentration. If you have all your business, we have a business from someone right now for $55 million. That's the agriculture company. 70% of their revenue is with one grocery store chain.
Oh, wow. It's dangerous. Hold you at gunpoint for anything or just leave.
Well, and then if they leave, what do you lose? 70%. So you're practically out of business. The last P is profits. And the reason I put profits last is because lack of profits is never the problem. It's the symptom of. It's the symptom of not having the right people in place, not being in a dying industry, not a thriving industry, not having your processes buttoned up, not, making sure you protect your proprietary assets. Lack of profits is never the problem. If you're operating all 5 Ps, you're going to be profitable. It's almost bulletproof.
What happens if all this makes, if I have a sophisticated buyer that's familiar with all these things and values them, I can see, I would get a lot more for my business. But, what if I'm approached by a non-sophisticated buyer, someone that wants to buy their first business, or they have a bunch of extra money, they want to buy a business, and they don't appreciate any of these things? Is it are these universally appreciated or not necessarily?
No, not necessarily. So if you read Exit Rich, I have a section in there on the negotiations, and I go through the 5 different types of buyers. First-time buyers, 98%, about 95% of buyers are first-time buyers. First-time buyers are not buying multi-million-dollar companies. They typically buy businesses under $1 to $2 million. And what they care about is very different. They don't really look, they're looking at the bottom line. They're not really looking at people or processes or anything else. You got turnaround specialists. They buy businesses that are in distress because they're going to fix them, grow them, sell them for a profit. And you got private. So the 3 types of buyers that really care about the 6 Ps are going to be your private equity groups. Those are PEGs, strategic/competitive buyers, and sophisticated entrepreneurs. But you really need an M&A advisor, because if a buyer comes to you and says, oh, Richard, I don't care about your IP. But then a buyer says, wait a minute. If you look at Richard's IP, if you look at his proprietary software, this proprietary software doesn't only just work for Richard's company. This proprietary software can be licensed to other businesses in this specific industry, or even maybe outside this industry. So we really, as advisors, look at each one of these synergies to see how they can be utilized outside of what even the business owner is currently utilizing it for, and how it can bring value to that buyer.
So a merger consultant, what size business would you suggest someone ask someone to come in and evaluate, and what do they do, and how much do they cost, and
M&I, are you talking about business book or mergers and acquisitions advisor?
Well, when people go to sell, right, and I'm sure a business broker leaps to mind, and they have their own commission and everything, but you mentioned a mergers and acquisitions, or a mergers type expert. What are they like? What do they do? How much do they cost, et cetera?
Yeah, so kind of let me separate the two out for you real quick for your audience. Business brokers sell small businesses, typically under $5 million. These are typically your clothing stores, your pizzerias, your restaurants, your smoothies, ice cream stores, etc. And then M&A advisors typically sell businesses $10 million and up. Business brokers really, they're not there to advise you. They're not there to help you get your business together. M&A advisors know how to evaluate businesses based upon the synergies. Most of them do, not all. But many of them are also not really advisors. They help you get the deal done. They put the deal on the market. They do the valuation. They put the deal on the market. They go to market. They try to start a company. I'm a little bit different than most of them. And the reason for that is because I own different businesses in different industries. I've always been an entrepreneur way before I got into this industry. And so I know a lot more about what it takes to run a business. I know a lot more about what it takes to make a business valuable, what buyers are looking for, etc. Most M&A, so business brokers typically don't charge a retainer fee, even straight commission. M&A advisors typically will charge a retainer fee anywhere from $40,000 to $150,000. Some of them charge monthly, some of them charge quarterly. I don't charge a retainer fee. I'm probably one of the only advisors. I know this because I'm on the panel for different M&A associations, but I don't charge a retainer fee. I'm going to say yet, because I want to change that one day, but I've been in this industry over 20 years. I've never charged a retainer fee. So I will look at a business. I'll do the valuation. If a client hires me to sell their business, I don't charge for the valuation either. We go to market with the business. If their business needs a lot of work and they're not sellable, then we have a Road to Exit Rich program. And that pricing depends upon the business and what they need.
Do you have a lot of people that say, Michelle, buy my business, please help me?
Well, I do that, so we don't just sell companies. I specialize in buying, selling, fixing, growing. There have been times when I bought businesses. I also partner with businesses. You heard about the graphics company that specializes in first responders. That company called me to sell it, and they were the typical business operates on 2 to 3 Ps out of the 6 Ps, and they had no people in place. It was husband, wife, and one employee. So I partnered with them and invested over $250,000 to get their business up and running, and now they're doing great. It's a multi-million-dollar company. And we're on track to sell for $15 million.
So people read your book, and then they're thinking, oh, I want to sell my business. Michelle's going to, her knowledge is going to help me sell it for a lot more. Do you have programs once someone reads the book where they can engage with you in some sort of a mentorship or, again, program to work in their business to improve it?
Yeah, and that's called the Road to Exit Rich program that I just mentioned. The Road to Exit Rich program really works with we work with the owner to figure out, what are their objectives, what are they trying to accomplish. We take them through what we call the GPS exit model, and we take them through what we call the seller sanity check, and we work with them on fixing their business to get it sellable for the price tag they desire.
And how long does it take when someone's considering selling? How much time should they take, or will they need to take? I know it depends where they are, but what's prudent? That's
always the $1 question, Richard, because there's just so many factors that come in play. The companies that typically have the highest in EBITDA will typically sell quicker than small businesses. Larger companies will typically sell quicker because there's more buyers for those type of businesses. But it just depends on so many different factors. Is the business involved? Is the business owner involved? Is the business dependent upon the owner? Do they have all the people in place? What are their industry sectors? How easy can someone come in and take over that business? The app company went from putting it on the market to getting a signed LOI within 2 weeks of going to market. 2 weeks. There's another company it's taken us 2 years. But the company that's taken 2 years to have some issues that we've had to resolve. So it just really depends upon how healthy the business is. Is even over $1 million? Is the business in a desirable location? We have some businesses in very undesirable locations, and that makes it difficult because the owner doesn't want to live there. And in some cases, owners feel like they have to live there to be in the business. We've got one in a very undesirable location that's been tough to move. But again, any businesses over $1 million in EBITDA, healthy, the business doesn't depend upon the owner, those will typically go much quicker. SaaS businesses sell quicker. E-commerce businesses sell faster. Like I said, this app company we have right now has been on the market only 2 weeks.
It sounds like about 6 months you could make a significant progress, though. Maybe is that a good, I don't know, rule of thumb?
Well, when we talk about it, so when we talk about the app company, we're talking about 2 weeks in market. But we're not talking about the 3 months before, 3 to 4 months before, where we had to do the evaluation, we had to wait on the seller to give us all the financials, we had to wait on the seller to put together the prospectus. That was 3 to 4 months beforehand. So, altogether, he'll be on the market 5 months, from start to finish. But a lot of owners, it could take a year. The average across the country is 1 to 1.5 years, or 1 to 2 years to sell a business.
Wow. Yeah. Do you see that people treat their business differently once they start gathering the info to sell it? Like, do they go into a different or a better mode? Does this help them regardless whether it sells or not?
Well, we really specialize in educating business owners what to do and what not to do, because many business owners will check out. So they'll get all the financials together, they'll give us everything we need, and they kind of check out. And we tell them not to do that. You should never check out of your business. You need to be working on your business as if you're never selling it. You need to still make those decisions. You need to still grow the company. You need to still make sure it's moving forward and not check out.
Okay. So, all right, this is good to do no matter whether you're going to sell it or not. But if you are going to sell it, it's worthwhile to go through the process, even if maybe you have the frustration of not being able to sell it at that time. Does that seem to open doors in people's minds where later on they do successfully sell? Or if they do it and it doesn't work, they get so disheartened they just give up?
Well, they do. They do. So there's a couple ways to answer that question. Number one, every business owner, every entrepreneur should read Exit Rich. And this is not just a commercial. It's a fact. Even Steve Forbes says all entrepreneurs should read Exit Rich because they need too much money on the table when they go to sell their business. But the reason everyone should read Exit Rich is because Exit Rich is not just about selling your company. Exit Rich is about building an asset that is sustainable, scalable, and sellable. Most businesses are not sellable because they're not sustainable. Something was to happen to the owner, the business dies when the owner dies, and it's not scalable. They can't scale it. So Exit Rich, the first half of Exit Rich is all about building that sustainable, scalable business. So when you are ready, or God forbid you die, you set your family up for success and your business will sell. As far as the second part of that question, yes, sellers have went through the process and they do get frustrated. But that's because they usually don't have the right advisor. The right advisor is always going to be making sure that they have backup buyers. Now, it's a fine line we walk, because when we get LOIs, letter of intent, there's always, a clause in there, a non-shop clause. So we have to be very careful about that. But we're always working to make sure we have backup buyers. Even for businesses we have under contract right now, we know on the app company, we got 3 more buyers in our back pocket. We know for the agriculture company, we have 5 more buyers in our back pocket. And so even though we're keeping those buyers saying, hey, we'll let you know, we'll keep you posted, it's really important to educate the seller that, yes, you do all this work, and just because a buyer drops out doesn't mean that's the end of the world. All the heavy lifting's been done. We'll bring another buyer to the table, and it won't be difficult next time because it's already been done.
Yeah, and I could see if someone hasn't gone through your program speaking to a potential buyer, they probably would, neglect to include a lot of elements that would perk up, the right buyer's ears. They wouldn't even know to include them in the, whatever you call the description of the business sale.
Right. We call it a SIM, confidential informational memorandum, or prospectus. That's correct. And that's why it's so important to really work with an advisor that knows how to showcase the strengths. Now we don't showcase the weaknesses, but we do point them out, because we don't want the buyer to find skeletons in the closet that we didn't disclose up front.
Yeah, I've seen that a few times, like owners taking compensation but calling it a loan that they have to pay back, and, hidden tax debt and all kinds of crazy stuff.
Yeah, there's all kinds of crazy stuff. Or lawsuits that the seller forgot to tell us about. That happens. We have one seller that had 18 different lawsuits that he completely forgot to tell us about.
What happens if you have a minority partner or minority owners? Do they just go along with the sale usually, or can they block it or cause problems? Or How do you resolve that if you're not the head honcho that only is one owner?
Well, you have to go look at the operating agreement and what defines the buy-sell agreement. So there should always be an operating, you're talking about partners, right? You're talking about partners.
Yeah, either equal or minority or, et cetera, right? How do they?
There should be an operating agreement with a buy-sell clause, and that buy-sell clause inside the part of the operating agreement dictates what happens. But most businesses, I won't say most, but quite a few of them don't have the buy-sell agreement. Many of them don't even have an operating agreement. So that's when you got to really try to get everybody on board. There's been situations that we've walked away from. One situation was 12 family members owning a business, and they all had different percentages, and there was no managing member, and I could just see the writing on the wall, so we walked away from that one. But, there's other ones where when it's a 50-50, like we got one right now where they hate each other, and, he's like, I just want out. Well, the other one's going to have to agree to that too. So the best thing is to get them both on the same page and just get the buyer for the whole thing and let them move on. But it's a delicate situation, and it just really depends upon what the bylaws say.
Okay, got it. So the best way for people to start engaging with you is to get Exit Rich. And you mentioned offline. We'll mention it again now. I guess the audiobook version is on sale right now. Like, where can people find it, and what's the current price?
Yeah, so I was on your show last year, I believe, Richard. I think it was last year.
Yeah, it was about a year ago. Yeah.
Yeah. And so we were on your show to launch Exit Rich, and Exit Rich came out in June, and we're happy to say it's a Wall Street Journal and USA Today best-selling book, which is great news. And everybody's been asking me about, Michelle, I don't like to read. I don't have time to read. Busy entrepreneurs don't always have time to read. They spend more time in their car. So we just came out with the audio version, and the audio version came out May 1st. We're selling it for $2.99, less than a cup of coffee at Starbucks, $2.99. And you can get that at Audible, on Amazon. You can get that at Barnes & Noble. You can get it on Apple, wherever you buy your Audible books, your audio books, go there. But only for this month, it's $2.99. And we will even give you additional bonuses. You'll become a lifetime membership. You'll have a lifetime membership club with the Exit Rich Book Club, where you can go online, listen to more video content, and me doing deep dives of some of these different techniques and strategies we've been talking about, plus documents. We have documents to operate your business and documents to sell your business. So sample employee handbooks, sample process and policy procedure manuals, sample non-competes. To sell your business, we have sample prospectuses, sample due diligence, checklists, letter of intents, purchase agreements, closing documents. All of those documents over $50,000. You go buy Exit Rich for $2.99. Send us a receipt. We will grant you access to the Exit Rich Book Club as well. You can also connect with me at Seiler Tucker, SeilerTucker.com. You can go to Seiler Tucker Academy, SeilerTuckerAcademy.com, and that's where you can take the 6B quiz to see where your strongest piece, where your weakest piece. And make sure you listen to our podcast called Exit Rich and follow me on social media.
Okay. Well, very good. Michelle, thanks for coming back. And, in the future, I would love to have you again. So thanks for being here.
Thanks, Richard. Thank you for having me on.
Here's some parting words from Self-Decode's founder, Joe. In a world of uncertainty, we've got you. Before taking control of my health, I had almost given up hope of the life I dreamed of. Then I realized the answers I needed were inside my DNA all along. Let us help you find yours. Start free with an existing DNA file or use code GENIUS to save 25% on a kit. A healthier life is waiting for you at selfdecode.com.
You've been listening to the Finding Genius podcast with Richard Jacobs. If you like what you hear, be sure to review and subscribe to the Finding Genius podcast on iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts. And want to be smarter than everybody else? Become a premium member at findinggeniuspodcast.com. This podcast is for information only. No advice of any kind is being given. Any action you take or don't take as a result of listening is your sole responsibility. Consult professionals when advice is needed.